this fantasy and what's going on as far as fantasy football related to that team. I started off with the Miami Dolphins, and basically the idea behind that is I'm going to start with the worst team in the division, or who I think is going to end up being the worst team in the division, and work my way up. Miami Dolphins was kind of an easy call for me. If you're wondering why, you can go back and listen to that podcast. Buffalo Bills versus the Jets, however, that was kind of a tough decision for me to make. I ended up breaking the tie with basically what quarterbacks I thought were better, because at the end of the day, I just have more faith in Josh McCown and Sam Darnold. But I just like Sam Darnold over Josh Allen. And so we're going to go into why in this podcast and what I kind of think of the fantasy stuff for Buffalo Bills. First thing I like to do is look at the coaching, see if there's any coaching changes. The head coach stays the same, Sean McDermott, who did a pretty good job last year, got into the playoffs. OC did change. They got Brian Dobell. The things you need to know about him is he basically comes over from the New England Patriots style of offense, and then last year he was with Alabama. So he's got a lot of experience winning. So I do like the move. I like the hire there. I do think so. Next thing I like to go to is Cody Glenn, who was traded to the Bengals. I think that's a big loss at left tackle. I don't think they did enough to replace him on the offensive line, so I do see the offensive line probably being a little worse this year. But again, going back to the Brian Dobell, what we're really going to see from that is they basically go from a West Coast offense to that Patriot-style offense, which I think is pronounced the Hertz-Perkins offense. So I probably screwed that name up. But that's basically one of the three types of offenses that they use in the NFL. And each coaching staff or coach will vary it basically throughout to kind of fit the scheme or the system that they want to run. Now, I really like how Dobell has shown that he can change based off the personnel that he has. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does with this Bills offense, which I think is just lacks a lot of talent. I mean, the big thing is going to be the Lesean McCoy offense. We're going to get to him and how he's probably fantasy-wise the only player I want to own on this roster. So let's start with the quarterbacks on who's going to be the quarterback this year. They went out and got A.J. McCarron. Nathan Peterman is still there from last year, and then they drafted Josh Allen in the first round. So you would imagine that eventually they're going to want to move to Josh Allen being the quarterback. I do not think that he comes in as the starter to begin the year. I would assume my money would be on A.J. McCarron, but I wouldn't rule out Nathan Peterman. I mean, Nathan Peterman was a rookie last year. I know everybody remembers that awful game against the Chargers, and they're just like, no way can you go back to Nathan Peterman. But if he shows like he's a better quarterback in the offseason, in training camp, then I could see them going there. I mean, this is the second year. You would imagine that he's made some improvement as far as that goes. And then you got Josh Allen. So really, fantasy-wise, you're not drafting either one of those quarterbacks because eventually you would imagine Josh Allen's going to take over, especially if this team is as bad as I think it's going to be. So I like to go back to history. So whether you want to spend a big price on a rookie like that, if maybe you like Josh Allen, maybe you're a Josh Allen truther. But let me tell you, since 2013, only one rookie quarterback has finished inside the top 10 in fantasy football. And I'm using that as my scoring league, so which is pretty close to standard scoring. So I would take that as basically just like a normal. I would think that's pretty close to the normal standard quarterback stuff. The only thing we do different is we charge -3 points instead of -2 points for interceptions. So that being said, I try to also comparison. Like I want to see who came in with like the same player profiles of Josh Allen and what were they able to do. Hasn't this been done before? And the big knock for me on Josh Allen was his accuracy. You don't see a lot of quarterbacks coming out of college who have bad accuracy in college and then all of a sudden coming to the NFL and having good accuracy in the NFL and having success with bad accuracy. Now, he's not one of those Cam Newton guys. A lot of people want to compare him to Cam Newton, but he's not. He doesn't have the physical tools Cam Newton has. I mean, he's gifted. He's got one of those laser rocket arms that can throw it all the way down the field, but not the running ability that Cam Newton has from that perspective. So I look at his 56% completion percentage in his sophomore year, and then his junior year at a 56.2%, which is very low. The quarterback that to me he reminds me of, like just kind of the hype coming out of college and what he could be in the NFL, is Jake Locker. Because Jake Locker coming out had a similar profile, like people were wowed with his like measurables, but when you go back and look at the stats, they look very similar to Josh Allen's. 58% completion. So he actually had a higher completion percentage the year before he came out. And then the year he actually came out, he had a 55.4, which is a little lower than Josh Allen's, but similar numbers as far as completion percentage goes. And that's exactly what he showed in the NFL. Like, he was never able to be accurate in the NFL. So for me, I'm not touching either one of them. Dynasty leagues, 2 quarterback leagues, obviously you can throw a late round flyer at Josh Allen. But to me, if you're looking at quarterback, he's the 5th quarterback. I would take Jackson over him. I would take Darnold. I would take Rosen, and I would definitely take Baker Mayfield over Josh Allen. So we go down to running back. So this is basically for your redraft leagues, the first place you're actually going to start caring about Buffalo Bills players, and that's Lesean McCoy. Lesean McCoy is going ADP 19. I think that's a little low because guys going ahead of him are guys like Freeman and Howard. McKinnon's going right next to him. I would take Lesean McCoy over all those guys. This offense is basically going to run through Lesean McCoy. I think the idea that Brian Dobell brings over from like the places that he's been is he finds ways to exploit mismatches. And the only real mismatch you're going to have on basically any team is Lesean McCoy in some way or form, whether it be receiving or the ability to run the football. Like, he's basically the only thing that makes this team like relevant as far as real talent goes. So I would assume that they're really going to feed Lesean McCoy. I'd expect for him to finish in the top 10. So I feel very comfortable drafting him in that range. For me, I think he's about my number 10 running back. And I've said this before for this year in particular, that I'm going to try and get 2 running backs within the first 4 rounds. And the reason for that is because I do like a lot of the receivers we see later. Before we move on to the receivers, I want to say that Chris Ivory is now in Buffalo Bills, so I do like him as a handcuff if you're in one of those deeper leagues where you really want to find a handcuff out there. And I do. Me being in a 14-team league, a lot of time those waiver wires, like, there's just nobody out there. So if I have the bench space, I'll get Lesean McCoy, and I'm very comfortable having Chris Ivory there as my backup, knowing that if Lesean McCoy goes down, Chris Ivory just jumps into being a very good running back. So just something to think about depending on how deep your league is. Tight end wise, Charles Clay's there, and he led that team in receiving yards last year. He was 2nd in targets, and he would probably been 1st in targets had he not missed 3 games because he was just 2 targets behind Lesean McCoy. So I actually like Charles Clay as a deep sleeper at tight end. He's not being drafted right now, so you're not having to give up a lot of draft capital. If you end up waiting too long on tight end, you don't get one that you feel comfortable with, this would be a great place to grab a guy. Like, maybe pair him up with, O.J. Howard. If you're a O.J. Howard truther and you really think that he could be something special, you get him late, maybe pair him with Charles Clay because you're going to get something out of Charles Clay. You can kind of wait and see how the Tampa Bay situation works out. All right, so wide receivers. The only one that I'm even going to drop, because I'm not even taking a shot on Zay Jones. I'd rather than taking a shot on Zay Jones, I'd rather draft with my last pick of Charles Clay or Chris Ivory to handcuff Lesean McCoy. Like, I want nothing to do with Zay Jones. If he was going to break out, he would have broke out last year. But they do have Kelvin Benjamin there. Kelvin Benjamin got traded to them mid-season, so he never did find a flow really with Tyrod Taylor. But I could see him being basically the focal point of that passing game this season, and he's going super late. Like, he's going at his ADP is 108.7, so right around that 10th round spot, depending on whether you're in 10-team leagues, 12-team leagues. But he's going in the same range as people like Cooper Kupp, Nelson Aguilar, Calvin Ridley, guys that are definitely not going to be the number ones on their own roster. I mean, you got Julio Jones soaking up targets. Calvin Ridley's probably going to be 3rd behind Sanu. You got Nelson Aguilar. They got Jeffrey there. They got Alshon Jeffrey. They have, Ertz. So even Nelson Aguilar, do you really expect him to have a big year? Whereas Kelvin Benjamin, the upside of them, if that pass game actually gets going, I mean, the quarterbacks don't have to be good to put up a lot of passing yards, which somebody has to catch those passing yards. Even bad teams have fantasy relevant players, and I think this is going to be the case here with Kelvin Benjamin. So like I said, I don't really want anybody else on the Buffalo Bills as far as receivers go. Defense, I'm not going to draft the Buffalo Bills defense unless you're just trying to use them for week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. But the truth is their offense, in my opinion, is too big of a liability. I just don't want any of that nonsense on my roster. All right, I was trying to make it fast. That's it for the Buffalo Bills. Thanks for watching the podcast. Hope you liked it. If you did, subscribe, hit the like button. That'd be greatly appreciated. Give me your thoughts and comments below. Till next time, see ya!